Hello and welcome back. This video is going to be about the unspoken aspect of the ego. The part of the ego that I personally had to overcome, which was the most dominant in my experience. It's the part that you don't really hear a lot about. Most of the time when you think of the ego or hear people speaking about the ego, they talk about the aggressive, destructive aspect where it outwardly is destructive towards other people, towards the world in general. Egomaniacs, the love for money and greed and that sort of thing. The heaviness of the ego that you can feel on other people. That's more obvious. But the more subtle ego, sneaky, the snake, sly, which is just as destructive ego, the nice guy. My question for you right now is, are you being nice to other people because you're avoiding conflict? Are you being nice to people because you think being nice is better than being mean? Is being a good person, in your eyes, better than being a bad person? Then you may be one of the biggest egoists of all. At one point in my life, I thought it was right to try to be a good person. I carried a fake face around myself of trying to be good all the time, trying to be polite, trying to be all these things that morally had a certain value, carried certain values, and I saw myself above other people that valued money more than love, for example. Even at the beginning of my spiritual journey, I had this with me and had to see the falsity of it. It was very difficult to drop. Self-criticism, self-condemnation, self-judgment are at the root. Not feeling good enough, feeling less than, is often the root of this type of ego, which is the root of almost all egos as well. It's a fear of conflict. It's a fear of being wrong. It's a fear because you know you can't do what you want to do, so you create this nice guy image in order to appear, at least he's nice in other people's eyes. This ego says, I'm better than you, in the most subtle way that others may feel inferior around him or her. Others might look up to this ego. Even those who may be rich might say, that's a nice person, he's got his values in place. People who go to church, a lot of these types of egos can be found there. I'm not saying everybody that goes to church is an egoist. The ego is very, very, very slippery, very, very, very subtle. And ultimately, I've found that anything you believe, any thought actually in the mind itself, the ego is everything that you think you are. When you look at you and start to label, I'm like this, I'm like that, I do this, I do that, That is your ego itself trying to identify itself with certain labels, trying to understand who it is. It's trying to build an identity. The mind has this mad desire to be recognized as real. It wants recognition. It wants to say, I am here. And it wants other people to say, I see you. It wants other people to recognize its existence. It's in constant search of validation from others. And this ego, which is prevalent in all egos, this version of the ego, needs to be uprooted. It needs to be recognized as false. Anything that you say inside of your mind as I, me, my, anytime you have that feeling of that, your past and the character, the you that you think is made up of by your past and the experiences you have is just another label that the ego identifies as my past, my experiences, the things I've been through. And when you identify in this way as who you are, there's a certain weight that's carried with you everywhere you go. There's a heaviness about you when you live in the ego that finds its identity in the past. Deep down, all egos want to die. Deep down, all egos know they have no reality in this world. And this scares the living crap out of them. So egos are in constant search from approval or of approval from others. They constantly need to verify their existence. When someone says, I did this, the ego will say, well, I also did that too, but mine was like this. All these ego gratifications, these ego, trying to find the right word, there's an actual word for this, ego repairs. Anytime, if you want to know if you're living through the ego, here's another hint for you, that anyone or anytime someone says an experience that they have had, if you are compelled and can't help yourself but to share another experience that is like theirs, that you've also had, that is the ego in you looking to validate itself through a similar experience. Me too. I also did that. Me too. It is your sickness, your illness, your disease manifesting. It is the child in you crying, look at me. I'm here. I'm here. Look what I did. Look what I can do. It's a child asking for its parents' attention when you don't have the ability to confide in yourself, when you lack confidence, confidence. Once you can learn to drop or recognize the ego for what it really is, you can see the falseness of it, and you can learn to let it go. And until you learn to recognize the many, 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 many manifestations of the ego, it will entrap you, each layer, each different layer, and every time that you think you're free from it, it's the ego itself that thinks it's free. That's just a new layer. So the search to free yourself from your ego will ultimately, hopefully, bring you to the conclusion that all in your mind is nothing more than energy flowing. And the minute that you start saying I or my, you're lost in it again. And the I or my is always attached with a feeling of personal, sometimes resentment, personal attack. It feels that it's happening to you. When you feel something is happening to you, it's through the eyes of the ego that you see this. That minute, the instant you recognize something is happening to me, is the moment of seeing the false in you as well. You are identifying as your mind or your body as you. When you are spirit, this is nothing more than a clever trick, an illusion that the ego likes to play so that it can capture consciousness for itself and to build a self, robbing you from your own reality, your deeper reality. Wherever you are around the world, whatever time it is that you're watching this, thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate you. Peace.